break out of your own little social networks and connect with as many people as you can, because we've brought an incredible group and a large group of people together from the entire industry today and tomorrow, which is great to be seen. Our final session before we head to lunch, Anna Bligh is going to be joined in conversation with a special guest. This is more than just in conversation. It's a passing of the baton in some ways. I should warn you, Anna, the last time I shared a stage with your special guest, I was in Adelaide at the International Conference of Astronauts and Astronautical Science. He was there in his capacity as a proud South Australian and the Minister at the time for Education and Training. And he announced in his address that Australia was joining the space race with our own National Space Agency. So no pressure, Anna, but he does love to make a bombshell announcement or two and then do the mic drop and just sort of leave. So over to you, Anna, in conversation with the incoming ABA CEO, the Honourable Simon Birmingham. The stage is yours.
Excellent. Good memories there, Adam.
Okay. Well, Simon, thank you so much for being part of this session. When we were putting together the program, the recruitment process was still underway and Simon had yet to be appointed. When the appointment was made, we were very keen, if he was able to make the time to be a part of the conference, to take an opportunity like this to sort of introduce Simon to the people in the audience. You all know of him. You've all seen him many, many times in his previous political responsibilities. But I thought you'd be interested, as my staff were, to hear a bit more about particularly how he's thinking about this role and about the industry. So I'm going to start with the very basic, Simon, and say, what was it about the role that attracted you?
Well, thanks, Anna, and thanks so much for the opportunity to share the stage with you in this not quite passing of the baton. It's all still your baton for a few more weeks yet, and then we shall engage in the passing. But I think to answer that question, firstly, the why banking piece, and when I think about the banking industry and sector, there's firstly the breadth of it, and the fact that every Australian, pretty much, every family, every business, every charity, every government, all have a reliance upon a good, strong, sound, safe banking industry. And then there's the power of it, and that sense that, if you like, banks are in the dream-making business. They're not the dreamers themselves, and ideally they're not even in the dreams, but they're empowering and making them happen, whether you're that young person saving for your first car or home, or the retiree planning, or trying to grow a business of any size or scale. You rely upon that banking product to help you actually realise those ambitions and those dreams that you have. So the industry and sector, because of that breadth, that power, it's definitely one of huge interest. Why this job, this time? Well, I think in leaving politics and public life, I don't know about you, you may not use these words, but I came to realise on the way out, it's like, I'm probably a bit of a policy wonk. And so the interest in, okay, you've got this industry with this huge reach and touch, and the ability through the ABA and working with it to ensure that you are still engaged in that public policy debate without the ugliness of partisanship that we've both had to deal with in the past, but actually that capacity to hopefully make a constructive difference and to ensure that those policy settings are building that trust we've heard so much about in the industry, building that confidence in Australians, ensuring it is productive, competitive, and able to help people realise those dreams and those aspirations. And with the ABA, I think an industry body high in credibility, and that's a testament to you and to your work over the years in building that strength alongside the team that I'm really looking forward to joining and working with. So a range of different factors that came together to say, yep, this is the right role, I hope, at the right and exciting time.
Well, I would describe myself as a policy wonk, and it was one of the things I missed about being involved in politics. And Simon, I can absolutely promise you an issues-rich environment.
No doubt.
They did promise me at the beginning that there might be ups and downs, but I would never be bored, and they have never let me down in that respect. So, and I'm sure you'll find the same. This morning, I think you've heard a lot about the ways that banking is changing, how it's being disrupted, and there's an explosion of digital capabilities, scams, artificial intelligence. Be interested to talk to us about lessons that you've learnt in your public life about leading through change and uncertainty, and disruption.
I mean, sometimes when I sort of look back on the nature of that change, it's scary when you think about the times as Trade Minister and Finance Minister and confronting, of course, COVID and then a war in Europe, a trade dispute with China, Trump #1, the degree and pace of change and challenge and unpredictability really is enormous. And right now in the world, we've got the mega trends, if you like, climate change, technology, both of which we've heard about today, the geostrategic competition that is fracturing parts of the established world order around the free flow of trade and capital. And so all of those changes, huge and impactful, making the environment ever more issues rich. For me, of course, when you're confronting those changes, there's the need to be able to adapt and to respond, but also the critical importance of staying very true and anchored to your values, to your beliefs, to the long-term ambitions that though they might change as you adapt them to circumstances, you shouldn't let the ultimate objectives in terms of those values and ambitions be thrown off course by those unexpected events. And you've particularly got to make sure that those things that do anchor you to do what's right and to build trust and confidence from others through times of crisis are what carry you and an organisation, an industry, a country through those different challenges.
You mentioned COVID. I think there are a few more disruptive events in recent times than our experience of the pandemic. It's actually 5 years, which to me it still feels much closer than that, and it had a very big impact on banking. It really accelerated a number of the trends that were already happening. But you were sworn in as Finance Minister at the height of the pandemic. I think it'd be interesting to hear from you what some of your strongest memories of that time are, and again, what, if any, lessons you took out of that in navigating disruption.
My first memory kind of predates being appointed as Finance Minister when I was Trade and Tourism Minister, and it's a really vivid one. It was the 1st of February 2020. It was a Saturday. I had the joy of being at a party pre-selection in the morning, something not always recommended to people. And our eldest daughter had her 9th birthday, that party scheduled that afternoon. And I'm sitting at this pre-selection meeting next to the then Premier of SA, Stephen Marshall, and the phone sort of pings and I look at it and it's a message calling me to a National Security Committee of Cabinet meeting that afternoon. I sort of look at the message and I sort of say to Stephen, this isn't good. And he said, why? And I said, well, first of all, I've got to go home and break the news that I'm not going to be there for the 9th birthday party, or not for much of it. But more significantly, I know what's going to be on the agenda for this meeting. This was the meeting where we decided to close the country's borders to China. I was the Trade and Tourism Minister at the time. Don't get much more consequential for trade and tourism than closing our borders with our largest trade and tourism partner and destination. Now, you've sat around a cabinet table, everybody sort of wears the hat they've got. So safe to say I was the sceptic in that debate. Asked the health officials lots of questions and through that tested the evidence, because that's the job you're there to do. I had an industry and a sector to represent around that cabinet discussion, ultimately to back a cabinet discussion. And from there, the pace, and we thought this was the most consequential decision we'd take. Until later, we closed all of the nation's borders. And we thought that'd be the most consequential decision we'd take. Until then, as lockdowns and shutdowns occur, we then had to invent JobKeeper, the biggest intervention in the economy in the country's history. So that scale of decision making just kept compounding one upon the other. And then, yes, to become finance minister and inherit the fiscal challenges and problems that obviously some of those decisions had helped to create as well. And I think some of the lessons out of that, we tried to make decisions proportionate where we could to the circumstances, to time limit and to sequence them in ways that enabled pathways to scale them back down or to get out of them over time. We tried to be guided by evidence and to constantly review that evidence. And in the long horizon of public policy making, coming back to the evidence, being willing to review it, being willing to admit when you need to change things, and often I think we probably don't look enough at where review cycles should have almost not quite default sunset mechanisms, but at least test the validity of decisions that have been made. And part of the challenge in the policy landscape at present is that layering of regulation that we heard many talk about this morning already, and that some of that layering could be avoided if we had a more rigorous process of not just reviewing regs over time, but considering whether they ought to be sunsetting.
Absolutely. I think I think it's clear that not only here in Australia but in jurisdictions that we would regard as peers globally, the conversation around the fit for purpose nature of regulation in the context of rapid change is a conversation that is, as I said, happening not just here, but we are about to see the new government or the re-elected government, embark on a public conversation about this through the roundtable and beyond. So I'm interested in how you're thinking about productivity and the country's challenge. It is a challenge. It's been a challenge for both sides of politics, for more than a decade now. How do you think about that challenge, and what role do you think banks can play in contributing to the conversation and potentially being part of the solution?
I think this is partly where hopefully I'm really fortunate of walking into your shoes and the role at a time of opportunity. You walked in at a real time of challenge and had to work through and overcome and confront those challenges and ensure the sector was focused on rebuilding that trust and confidence. I walk in at a time where government is having this conversation about productivity, and we should absolutely welcome it. We should have strong ambitions for it. And of course, we should be strong and clear in terms of how we then seek to ensure it has meaningful outcomes from the type of dialogue that will happen in a few weeks' time and beyond that in terms of the government's productivity agenda. Now, what does that mean for the banking sector? Well, I thought Andrew and Mel did a great job this morning. Of course, I'd say that, but they did a really good job talking, firstly about just what productivity is. It's not a buzzword, and it's also not punitive. It can often be heard, I think, in the public debate as people thinking, oh, is this them wanting me to work harder and longer? When it's actually the reverse, of course, that it's about those higher living standards and extracting more from less, getting better outcomes from fewer inputs. And so understanding that part's important. For banks, productivity, of course, starts internally. That's the competition between all of the members and the opportunities they have to derive better returns for shareholders and be more competitive in their product offering. There's a collaborative piece, and I think we've heard a lot of that in relation to the cooperation and the great work being done on scams and fraud prevention, and the realisation that the industry can be stronger and more productive by working together in those sectors. But then clearly there is the big piece about the role of government regulation across this sector. And quite rightly, banking is one of the most regulated sectors, from the role of government, the RBA, ASIC, APRA, huge points of interface. But the need to make sure they're not duplicating, the need to get breakthroughs in terms of precise areas, because our sector has a unique role to play in the productivity space, and that is the allocation of capital and the efficient direction of that capital. Many will go into the productivity discussions talking about, of course, the productivity of labour and the productivity of other areas of the economy, but and they all matter to banking, but the allocation of capital is so very essential, and we need our members to be empowered to make decisions as quickly, as efficiently, as predictably as possible, so that those relying on it, whether it's to build more homes or to grow more businesses, know how best to be able to access that capital to achieve those outcomes for the country's overall economic growth.
Okay, as we draw to an end, let's get personal and talk about the things that really matter. Your X-Feed status says, proud dad, frustrated Crows fan. How are you feeling about the Crows' chances this season?
I think I should update that clearly, because it's not...
It's not as frustrating as it used to be.
For the first time in many years, I'm no longer frustrated, I'm nervous. I haven't sort of felt footy nervousness, rolling through July and into August and hopefully September. Since we played a woeful grand final against Richmond too many years ago now. So, I'm excited. I'm a little nervous. I took our 12-year-old daughter to watch the Bulldogs game in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago and felt nervous the whole way through, but then got this amazing photo afterwards of her standing next to Riley Tilthorpe, and she kind of comes up to about his waist. It's kind of great fun. Great distraction from the rest of the world.
Well, folks, we're all looking forward to Simon starting on the 18th of August. We're now about to go into lunch, so there's a much less formal opportunity for you to say hello to Simon, to introduce yourselves. Many of you represent very important stakeholder organisations for not only the ABA but the banking industry as a whole. He'll be doing his best in his first couple of months to get out there and meet with all of you, but you've got a chance over lunch to grab him and say hello as well. So Simon, thanks for making the time today, and we're looking forward to you taking up the role. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, and well done to you again, and can't wait to work with you all.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you, Simon. And Anna, the sign of a great leader is also someone who leaves an organisation in a better state than when they found it, and also has a vision of that organisation beyond their time to also making sure it thrives in the future. I think that conversation's made it clear that you've succeeded absolutely on both of those important standards. Please, one more round of applause for Anna and Simon. What a great conversation. And if you want to grab Simon's ear now to either talk about the future of banking in Australia or whether Adelaide can go all the way with that three-big-man frontliner, whether Tex Walker should take a rest, another small forward, I know he's got thoughts on it. Go and see him outside over lunch. Hashtag Ausbanking 2025 if you want to get in your socials. We'll be back here at 2 o'clock for our afternoon sessions.